The smart lock called him guest. I changed the code while he slept. Hook, the app on my phone buzzed at 2:14 a.m. with the kind of confidence only bad news has. Front door, unlocked by guest. Guest was capitalization pretending it knew someone's name. The log showed two earlier entries I hadn't seen, 11:32 p.m., 12:47 a.m., each one a small door opening in the night. Our lock recognizes phones, wrists, voices. Guest is what it calls people who borrow their welcome. My name is Miles. I'm 35. I write copy that insists new things will behave like old promises. My husband is Adrian. He designs galleries so strangers feel smarter just for moving through light. We've been married 4 years, long enough to turn excellent at decency and a little cowardly about heat. Our mornings are choreography. Coffee placed where a hand will find it. A kiss hung on the doorframe like a charge left on the counter. Text receipts masquerading as care. We don't break easily, which is its own danger. At 2:18 he came into the bedroom by the light his phone made of his face. He smelled like chilled air and a conversation that ended where temptation begins. He set his keys down as if the dish might testify. When he climbed in beside me, I watched the number on the ceiling we always pretend we can't see. The thermostat's blue 67, glow on and off like a conscience. I asked nothing. The smart lock had already told me more than honesty can carry gracefully at that hour. At 8:09 we practiced our ritual. Not the one you think. Months ago, after a different small disaster, I had taped a square of blue painter's tape to the kitchen window and written 8:07 above it with the pencil that lives by the calendar. 4 minutes of breath with his palm between my shoulder blades, 3 minutes of inventory, water in the good glasses, our private liturgy for when mercy clocks in. But this morning I changed the ritual. I set his hand where it belongs, then slid my phone onto the sill where light could read it and turned the screen so he saw, guest 2:14. The quiet made a shape around us. Do you want to lie? I asked softly. It was an invitation to be slower, to rehearse, to perform. He didn't take it. I kissed him, he said. Then, because he refuses to waste breath on the part where he plans to lie and remembers who I am, he added, twice. Once because I wanted to be chosen without auditioning. Once because I wanted to hurt us hard enough to move. Both times I thought of you. Both times I kept going. The thing about truths told at 8:09 a.m. is they behave like coffee. They clarify and then shake you. I turned the phone face down and pressed his palm harder into that square of my back that teaches lungs their job. We kept it clean enough for the window and explicit enough that the glass understood we'd earned privacy. My mouth found the place under his jaw where my name lives even when I've been lazy with its upkeep. Whose code? I asked against his collar. Who got the guest link? Nico, he said, and the name sounded like a paper cut. From the install at the museum. He stayed late to help with the crates when the freight elevator sulked. We were tired enough to be stupid and awake enough to be dangerous. Did you give him the code? I asked, though the app had already testified. I sent the temporary link because he forgot his wallet, Adrian said. He said he'd grab it here on his way to the truck. He grabbed my mouth first. It is astonishing what a sentence can do to a room. The refrigerator decided to sigh. The faucet considered leaking and abstained. On the counter, the good glasses made the small sound they make when they consider being useful again. Do you want me to leave? I said, surprising myself. Or him? I want to stay and make staying worth it, he said. And then he did what I asked before I could ask it. He took my phone, opened the app, and revoked the guest code with a thumb that shook once and then remembered who it belonged to. Change the master, he added, pushing the device back to me like a man turning in a weapon. I changed it. 4 numbers that mattered to no one but us. I changed the name of our lock to the one we use when we're being unserious about serious things. He laughed when he saw it. The laugh made my sternum clock in. We sent a text to Nico that used more politeness than he deserved and exactly the amount of dignity I wanted to keep. The guest link is closed. Do not use any key you think you have. Do not come here. If you need to speak, speak now. The dots appeared, vanished, returned. At 8:21 he answered, and his message was a single sentence that behaved like a man trying decency on for the first time. Understood. That was the last decent thing he did for days. Adrian told me the short version of the long story while the kettle made its affidavit. The after-hours light check, the donor who wanted to be flattered by hardwood, the volunteer who bilayed early, the museum guard who believes cameras discipline lust when they mostly just record it. He said Nico's name twice and mine like a metronome. He didn't minimize. He didn't romanticize. He detailed. There's a way to confess that lets you stay a person. We spent the day as people do who have work and also a bleeding animal in the house they call marriage. I wrote lines for a landing page that promised a calendar could teach you to be on time for your own life. He returned a rental scissor lift and adjusted a dimmer until Light decided to learn manners. At 3:15, my phone buzzed a push alert no app admits to scheduling. Listen to 11 seconds of water. I sent present/bus stop. He replied present/load in, which is museum for I'm up where the weight is, making sure nothing falls on you while you walk under it. At 6:42, the doorbell made its out-of-tune plea. The camera sent a clean image of a man in a white shirt rolled to the illegal degree, tie loosened in that studied way that insists on weather. His face would be forgiven under fluorescent light and worshipped under anything more merciful. He looked directly into the lens because decent men sometimes don't know where to look. I opened the door because the only thing worse than cruelty is the version of mercy that performs itself through peepholes. Nico's eyes did an apology like a soliloquy, well delivered, unconvincing. I came for my wallet, he said, holding up a thin square of leather that could have belonged to any man, or to the man I am when I forget to be clever. It's not here, Adrian said from behind me. His voice was the voice he uses to direct a crew, gentle, absolute. You already came for the thing you wanted. Nico nodded, a small bow to accuracy. Do you want me to leave? He asked me, and the sentence had a dignity I recognized as expensive. I stepped aside half an inch so I could keep my spine against the jamb. Yes, I said. Thank you, I added, because my mother is a religion I refuse to renounce at my own threshold. He didn't argue. He didn't touch Adrian's knuckles with performative punctuation, which I respected more than I expected to. He went down the stairs like a man who knows what doors are for. The app hummed happily to itself. Front door. Locked. Sometimes software has the decency to describe relief. We made dinner badly and ate it well, which is a metaphor I am trying to break of its bad habits. At 8:07, we stood in the blue square and practiced breath with instructions because instructions were the only language we trusted. At 8:12, we did inventory. His 3 facts were sober. His 2 fears were not cowardly. His 1 want was me in a sentence that used my first name and not a joke. Mine matched. At 8:20, the water in the good glasses made the small noise it makes when it remembers it is the older sibling of wine. We kept the night decent enough for neighbors and explicit enough to keep our furniture honest. Thumb finding wrist, breath finding back of the heart, mouth finding the place under the ear that teaches the room your first language. We slept like men who had been permitted a small reprieve and didn't trust the paperwork. It wasn't tidy. Twice that week Adrian was late and the old monologue in my throat put powder on its nose, adjusted its tie, and asked for a stage. I made it sit in the hallway and listen to the refrigerator. Once, at noon on a Saturday, I saw Nico outside the museum, tie loosened to the illegal degree, talking to a woman whose earrings looked like punctuation. He lifted 2 fingers, weather, not invitation. I nodded back because spite is expensive and I intend to retire loved. There were fights. There were competent, adult fights because we don't scream, we negotiate. I asked why applause can be mistaken for oxygen. He asked why I prefer dignity to heat. I said I am tired of writing copy for us that reads like compliance. He said he forgot he could ask me for noise. We traded sentences that were small and accurate and heavier than lies shouted from more dramatic furniture. He said Nico's name without flinching. I said mine like an address I won't sublet. The lock learned its new code the way muscle learns after injury, slow, stubborn, then clean. We added rules to the ritual which are not the same as laws. When we open the door at night, we say out loud, "I'm in" or "I'm out," because entrances have begun to interest me as narrative and not just architecture. When one of us has to be late, he says present place, because present is more erotic than sorry when it's honest. One afternoon, the Smart Lock app pushed me a firmware update. Improved guest management, the note said, as if it were reporting on a cabinet reshuffle in a small country with bad borders. I renamed guest to nobody. I renamed our lock again, to a joke only we would giggle at, nothing a third party could pronounce. Adrian rolled his eyes at me, and then turned the new handle with a reverence that made me forgive him for ever thinking doors are just doors. A month later, the museum hosted a donor preview. I don't like these. They smell like sponsored sincerity. But I went because I wanted to see the room he had made behave. He met me by the service elevator with his tie fixed and his mouth disciplined. "Walk with me," he said, and we did, through a gallery he'd tuned until color decided to speak in grammar anyone could follow. Near the exit, Nico stood by a catering station, sleeves rolled to the usual cruelty, hands clean, expression simple. He lifted 2 fingers in greeting. I answered the same way. An usher took our empty glasses like she knew how to avoid becoming part of a story. At 10:02, the app hummed, front door unlocked by Miles. The name did something to my chest. At 10:03, front door unlocked by Adrian. We laughed on the stairs because we arrived together and the lock still recognized us as separate people. In the kitchen, the blue square waited like a witness. The tape had started to curl at one corner. He pressed it down with his thumb, domestic and miraculous. We're not romantic every night. Sometimes we are only accurate. He still has a taste for applause he is trying to break into usefulness. I still have a taste for safety I am teaching to stop dressing as silence. Sometimes the app buzzes at odd hours because the cloud believes in drama. Sometimes the door sticks in protest because humidity thinks it can be our parent. Still at 8:07 there is a palm on the back of the heart and breath that obeys, and a window that pretends to be a camera and then remembers it is only glass. People ask, over sinks and stoops and under misbehaving streetlights, whether there was a villain. They want me to say a man with forgiving wrists, or a museum that flatters betrayal, or a smart lock that turned our home into a courtroom. The truth humiliates us evenly, which is the only kind that helps. The villain was the version of us that outsourced heat to schedules and romance to features. The miracle was repetitive and small. We knocked on our own door, said where we were, put a palm where breath listens, counted to 60, tried again. The erotic part wasn't the white shirt rolled one button too far, or the word guest glowing like a dare, or a tie loosened to the degree statutes should have an opinion on. It was water in the good glasses clicking like a language we finally decided to study. It was my name in his mouth at the window's blue, spoken like rent paid on time. It was the new code his thumb learned by heart. Last night just past 2:14 a.m. the app buzzed. My body woke with a scholar's dread. The message read, "Front door locked by Adrian." The lock, perhaps moved by mercy, added a second line it had never offered before. Home mode on. Maybe it was the update. Maybe the house had chosen a side. Either way, I slid the phone face down and reached for the man beside me. He was already reaching back. We didn't narrate it. We let the door keep its job. Tonight at 7:58 I'll set my phone face down like manners are still a technology worth installing. At 8:07 his palm will find the back of the heart and the tape will remember why it has permission to hold us still. If we miss, we'll do the only miracle repetition ever made plausible. Try again. 8:17, 10, 10, 11, 11, whenever mercy clocks in. Somewhere another lock is calling someone guest. Our door knows our knock. It keeps opening when we ask it to.